and welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your hosts, Daniel.
And Daniel.
And today we have a very special guest, a good friend of the podcast, a good friend of ours personally, and celebrity internet famous GameheadGeek. Say hello.
Hello.
GameheadGeek, tell the audience how you were invited onto our podcast, how we know you. Tell us the spiel. What are you about?
First, you threatened me if I didn't come on, I was going to have to play another demo. So,
at least he didn't threaten you with Frederikus.
Let the record show that is not true. You wouldn't have anyway.
that's not the point. What were the questions again?
Who are you?
Okay, so I'm GameheadGeek. I have a TikTok and Instagram. I really haven't been very active on it, just because my room has slowly become a work in progress with games and board games and stuff like that. So,
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Your room at least can hold 2 people in it right now. I don't think mine could. So,
which is weird because your room is bigger than mine.
I know, but I know you two because Danny convinced me to go to a game day, and I met Daniel at that game day, and he beat me in King of Tokyo, and he's been beating me ever since.
Detachable tail for the win.
Taking all my money.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, this is like one of the best parts, is because like some people might know GameheadGeek, and might even be watching this like on a future episode because they know who GameheadGeek is, right? And we brought him on, or vice versa. They might be discovering his stuff for the first time because he's on our episode. More likely on your end, but. I mean, that's one of the cool things about gaming is that we all met forever and a half ago.
I don't know. We have a following in Virginia and New Jersey, of all places.
That's true. But we all met, like what, 10 years ago now? Is it?
2014, yeah.
Yeah, 2014. So, yeah, it's been this whole thing, and it's taken us this long to get him on the podcast.
No, it's the second time he's been
Technically. No, it's the first time I've been on the podcast with him.
That is true.
Oh, that's right, because you were gone. That was the reason why I was on the podcast.
Yeah,
that's right.
He did the top 8 debate CMON games with me.
That's right, yeah. And that was one that you were itching to do anyway, which works, because I never played enough CMON games, or at least not enough overlap, to
we'll
justify
fix that.
it.
I think you're good now.
I'm sure I'm good now. I'm positive. But either way, that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to be doing a compare and contrast for 2 games that all 3 of us have played, and we all pretty much enjoy quite a bit. Terraforming Mars and Earth. What is your initial thoughts on this episode?
I'm excited for it. I love both of these games. They scratch the same itch, but for different tastes. If you want something faster or something more lightweight, you have one game. If you want something that has a little more crunch or heavier, you have another game. So sure. I'm looking forward to that. And yourself, Gamehead?
I'm in the same boat. Honestly, I think Earth is great because I could play that with my wife and still get that itch. And then playing Terraforming Mars with you guys would be definitely something that I really get more into that with because of it. So
cool.
All right.
Awesome. But before we get into that, we have some news that we're going to talk about. We were going to plan on this later, but you know what, GameheadGeek? You're in on the news now. You get to tell us your initial thoughts. This will be brand new to you. Probably not really, but we'll do it either way. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to start with the Coin of Doom. I'm starting us off today. So, an announcement for one of my favorite 2-player games of all time. They announced an expansion for it, and this is one of the few examples that I told my son about an expansion to a board game, and he didn't just go, stop telling me about board games, Dad. He actually was like, wait, really? What? And him and I went on Board Game Geek and started looking at the pre-production pictures and some of the ideas and the descriptions and started talking about how it works. This is the Turbulence expansion for Sky Team. I'm very excited about this.
Well, I know you are. GameheadGeek, we were just talking about it before the podcast. You haven't played Sky Team yet, have you?
no, I haven't. And 2-player games don't get played very much in this house.
Right. And listeners of the podcast know that is a statement that has been said time after time again because of Daniel 1 here. But no, the truth is, like, this is one of those weird 2-player games. It got nominated for the Spiel des Jahres, of course. And it's one that's like, it's not campaign, but there's so many different modules you can throw in and out of it. And this expansion looks like it's only like just a small little box, like a longer box.
Yeah.
More content, 20 more scenarios, new ways to do stuff. Like there's like an alarm that can go off. You have to do these. And for some reason, the production picture has little penguin meeples, and no description describes what that has to do with anything. I'm very curious, and I'm kind of worried at the same time.
No, I do like Sky Team. I think it's a fantastic game. It was fun. I got to play it on an airplane while we were traveling to Dallas to go to the Gamma Expo. And for people who don't know, we traveled to Dallas to meet up with you who were already there for family obligations. And then we drove from Dallas to Gamma. So me and our friend Dammit Dom, who was recently on the podcast last month, we played it on the plane, which was shenanigans at its best.
I mean, like, how... Now that you've played it, do you want to play it more or no?
Oh, yeah. I want to dig deeper into the scenarios. I want to be better than, flipping the plane over when we played it.
Yeah. Do a barrel roll.
Well, our plane did a barrel roll. So what happens is there's a part where you have to make sure your numbers are even when you're trying to land the plane. And he rolled really low, and I rolled really high, so my number was a 6, and his was a 1, and so it just flipped us over.
Oh, jeez.
Oh. He has a lot of fun moving parts. All right, your next piece of news.
All right, so my piece of news, for those who are not aware, we like listening to all the awards. We've talked about the Tabletop American Games or something like that. They're our answer to the Spiel des Jahres. We've talked about the nominees for the Spiel des Jahres in past episodes. As well as when this airs, it would be close to the time where they announce the winners of the Spiel des Jahres, so we'll talk about that next month. Mm-hmm. But this week, the Dice Tower have made aware of their nominees this year. I'm not going to go into the categories and all the nominees. We'll talk about them when the games wins and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But you have the nominees were announced. I like the way they do the Dice Tower Network.
Like a People's Choice Awards,
yeah,
right?
All of them vote in the Dice Tower Network vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
Also want to make a quick reference. The Facebook group that we always go to, they have their award nominations going on. If you're a part of the Board Game Revolution Facebook group, they have a Google's Doc that you can go vote for your game on there as well. Like I said, I like the way it's everybody who's connected to the Dice Tower Network, they vote on the games, whoever's going to win. The winner will be announced at Gen Con this year, so within about a month or so when this airs. Mm-hmm. And then they also announced, which is intriguing to me, for their Winter Spectacular later in the year, the Hall of Fame. So now they're doing the Dice Tower Hall of Fame, so I think that's intriguing as well. What are your thoughts, Gamehead?
I like how they do the awards too. It's one of those that I always look forward to it. It's sad thing is I don't keep up with it as much as I used to. So I'm usually once you guys tell me, I'm like, oh, that's really cool, and then I'll go look at it. But the nominees have already gone through, and they've already usually done the award ceremony at the I think the cruise that they do it at.
Oh no, they made the announcement on their Summer Spectacular, and then they make the awards announcements at their show on Gen Con.
Oh, was it Gen Con? Okay.
Yeah, the Gen Con is where they do the awards now.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
The next piece I had was a link that you actually sent me earlier today. That it's a new group that already has like 600 members or something. Or not new, well, new-ish, right?
Yeah.
It's a group of tabletop board game designers, and they made a group called the Tabletop Game Designers Association, or the TTGDA for short. Really rolls off the tongue. But basically, I guess what this is, and I thought this was interesting for anybody who's an aspiring designer. Of course, myself included. I thought it was somewhat interesting. Yeah, is that they help with reviewing contracts or negotiation. What happens to rights of your games? If it's no longer in production, what can you do? Can you go shop it around? Do you need art? Do you need new names? What can you do with it? What kind of acknowledgments you have to do? They give advice. They have a resource library of different things. I read about it a little bit. The only thing that I feel it's lacking, and I would sign up immediately if this was something that it offered, is that if you were part of this group, if there was any way that you could contact publishers and go, hey, look, I'm part of this group. Mm-hmm. It's like a writer's guild or whatever. It's like an authorship. How is this going to help me pitch to publishers? Yeah. And although they offer seminars and advice for how to pitch, you still got to set the meetings up, right? And that's kind of the hard part.
And I think the it's good what they're doing because people had to figure this out on their own.
Right.
Now they're helping like the new designers that are coming up.
Exactly.
So I do like that aspect of it.
And it's not just a nobody, right? It's not just a group of people. Like there's other groups of people offering similar advice, but it's headed just a couple of names. I know Elizabeth Hargrave is the treasurer, right? But the president or the main guy, Jeff Engelstein, of Dice Tower and game design fame and book fame, like he's an author, and he really delves into game design and game theory in his design, which is awesome. When I saw that name, I was like, all right, well, if that's my chance to say hello to Jeff Engelstein, I might take it.
No, I had heard this on another podcast that I listened to, that they had just come up with this and that she was a part of it. So I thought this was a really cool idea. So
don't mind Daniel too over here.
I'm just shaking my head just because another podcast, huh?
Well, I mean, it's an hour and a half trip to work every day.
I was gonna say he's in the car all day.
That's fair. That's fair. We only put out so much content.
I'm driving all day long, so
yeah, that's very fair. Okay, I'll forgive you this once.
Okay.
But watch yourself, sir. Watch yourself.
Hey.
Hay is for horses, sir.
Oh my God, the teacher's coming out. And the dad. Alright, so my next bit of news, sidestepping the puns over here, is a big, sad piece of news, though. Me and GameheadGeek really did enjoy this game when it first came out. I just didn't want to get into it because of how expensive it was going to end up being.
Oh, yeah.
This is the fact that Star Wars X-Wing and Star Wars Armada is being shut down. It was originally printed, X-Wing anyways, originally printed in 2012 under Fantasy Flight Games. So it had a decent run.
Yeah.
But it kind of really slowed down after the Asmodee buyout in moving it over to Atomic Mass. They supported it as much as they could, but honestly, if they weren't getting any leeway, it was sad. I did enjoy this game. They will continue their ground-based game, Shatterpoint.
Yeah.
But the fact that X-Wing and Armada, which has a big following, is basically shutting down.
Well, I mean, it's just they're not making new stuff, right? They're not gonna do it. But the good thing is about board games and tabletop games is that unlike digital adaptations or video games or anything, you're not once a new platform comes out, that doesn't mean that it's dead, right? There's no new platforms for board games. As long as you have a table, you can still have it as long as you have the hardware. Yeah. Now, granted, that does make the market for the stuff go
yes
more
and no.
expensive.
All I gotta say is Golem Arcana.
Well, yeah, sure, ones that have digital apps to it, but X-Wing doesn't. And what I'm saying, though, is that even though that might drive up some of the price of the used stuff, really, I mean, the people that were still playing it, or the people playing it since its inception, I feel.
Yeah.
And being a player of it, I really enjoyed the game, and I had a lot of fun with it, but, this doesn't hurt my feelings, personally.
Same with me.
But again, if it does, if you're a listener,
go ahead,
I apologize.
It's one of those, I took all my my ships and I put little eye hooks in them and I turned them into Christmas ornaments.
You're gonna get some
Oh
hate.
God!
I'm probably gonna get hate for that. But
so just remember, everybody, his TikTok is GameheadGeek. Don't send it to the Daniels.
Yeah.
No,
send your hate mail to Bryce at everydayboardgames.com. All right. Next piece of news I wanted to talk about is a game that just came out. It was an expand-alone game that just came out to Target, finally. If you go to Target now, they're clearancing out a lot of older games. They're going through their summertime revamp, and they have a new end cap where they have a bunch of their new stuff that they just came up with. This is the newest Disney Villainous. It is called Disney Villainous Sugar and Spite, and it has 2 characters. They've been decreasing ever since the beginning, but I mean, there's only so many Disney villains you can have, right?
No, this is the first one outside the Oogie Boogie that has less than 3.
Right. So this is the second one that's less than 3, but it went from 5 to 3 to 3 to 3 to a new version of the base game with only 4 to 3 to 1 to 2. So that's a downward slope is what I'm saying here. But either way, the 2 characters that are in there, you have Shere Khan.
Shere Khan.
Shere Khan, okay, yeah. It's from Jungle Book. Haven't seen it in a really long time. Hardly remember it. Don't know how the character works. But the one I'm excited about is King Candy. I mean, I know a lot of people are really excited about, Jungle Book. Sure, I get that. I totally don't disagree with you. But King Candy is what... first off, GameheadGeek, have you played Villainous?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have... The reason I got that is because I wanted to teach the mechanic for Scythe to my wife to see if she liked it. That was the whole reason I picked that game up.
And what did she think?
She thought it was okay, but she thought it stayed its welcome a little bit too long, so I never really got into the expansions or anything.
Sure. So what makes this different? So you obviously like the mechanism. You move your pawn over to a different location, take all the actions.
Yep.
So King Candy doesn't do that. He has a racetrack board.
I saw that.
And that's the most intriguing part of it, is I haven't delved too much into it. I don't know what the full mechanisms are, but that alone, as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, that's awesome. He's racing around. That's awesome.
I looked into it. I don't know how he triggers. Like, I know he's got to go in a certain pattern, and you have to cross the finish line, and Vanellope has to have a glitch on her. Mm-hmm. And so if you do that, you win the game. But I don't know if it just triggers one spot at a time on that racetrack or if he triggers the whole part of the board. That's the only thing I don't know. I didn't really read into it. I just know how he's supposed to win. He needs to get to the finish line with a glitch on Vanellope.
Yeah, which, stuff like this I'm excited about because they're taking, like they made this game initially so it could be super asymmetric. You have very much different ways to play. And they're still pushing that boundary. Like, you just showed me your copy of Oogie Boogie, right? And it has dice that come with it. Broken dice, but dice nonetheless.
Yeah.
So, I have a question on this because wasn't this originally set up by Prospero Hall?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so then, since Prospero Hall has now disbanded...
Right.
How is that still working? Who's doing...
So, Ravensburger still has the rights to it, and they own the rights to the game. And I think they get a separate designer now, too.
Yeah, he's like the lead of development. His name is Mike Mulvihill.
Yeah.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting him before. He's a pretty nice guy. And he's since done the revamps of Horrified as well as most of the recent Villains.
I just forgot it was Roethlisberger that owned the rights to it.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're the same ones that own Horrified as well.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, so my next bit of news is a place I tend to sometimes get my board game news. I'll get articles from it, the emails. Dicebreaker is one of the places that's how I found out about Prospero Hall. It's, the people that got laid off, they're starting their own company was through Dicebreaker. And there were some other bits of news that I got from this company.
Sure.
Well, they were just acquired by IGN, which is a video game. They have like YouTube channel. They were originally written press. Their website. They have a lot going on there.
They were huge back in like the early 2000s. Yeah.
The aughts.
Everybody knew IGN.
So not only did they acquire that, they also acquired basically all the UK-based Game Network IP stuff. So they acquired Rock, Paper, Shotgun, Video Game 24/7 or VG247, Eurogamer in games industry. Now, there has been talks that there's a lot of redundancies with like the CEOs and the higher ups, so there's no word as of right now of any layoffs, but with redundancies, more than likely there are going to be some layoffs, which is sad because you don't really have like a lot of news places for Dice Tower News. We have, or not Dice Tower News, but board game news. You have Dice Tower News. You have Dicebreaker was a really good one. You have Eric Martin on Board Game Geek. He does drop a lot of good news out there too, but there's not a lot of information out there that you're getting the news from outside of like these smaller sites. So like I liked using Dicebreaker because I knew they were UK based, so I get a lot of information that you wouldn't get out here. They do a lot of more industry news as well. That's why I like reading them as well. Mm-hmm. Again, that's how I found out about Tempest Workshop becoming a thing. So sad. I hope they stick around. I don't know how it's going to work. IGN is not really the best when it comes to like articles and stuff like that. It's mainly reviews and stuff. Right. So, did you ever use Dicebreaker, Gamehead?
No, most of my news, if I ever got it, was either through you guys, Dice Tower News, which I know they're out, and then through the Secret Cabal, they do a news segment as well.
Oh, okay. We might have to start stealing their information too.
Yeah, they do actually go into industry news too, as well.
Cool. Awesome. I'll check that out. And my last piece of news. I'm very excited. I just found out about this maybe last week. Mid last week. There is one of my favorite IPs is having a new game printed under it. It's easily one of my favorite IPs. There's already a board game that uses this IP, and the board game is okay.
I know which one you're talking about because I just saw the news on this too.
Evil Dead 2?
Yeah.
So, yes, there's going to be a new Evil Dead 2 board game.
With a different company now, right?
Different company.
Yeah.
And this is, their game is called Evil Dead 2 1%. It's based off of a game called 1%. A groovy game of strategic chance. And the way it works is pretty straightforward. It's kind of like a weird press your luck, almost liar's dice kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. Basically, all you have to do is you have 2 D10s, and you have to roll them and roll both zeros. That's how you win. 1 in 100 chance. 1%. That's all you gotta do. Now, the way it works, though, is obviously that's really difficult, and that's the point. And so you're playing cards that represent different parts of the movie, like either like the severed head of Linda, or the hand crawling around, or the chainsaw, or whatever. You're playing these cards out until eventually somebody goes, no, it isn't going to happen. Then that one person then rolls to try and get that zero, being able to draw cards to manipulate that in different ways, either whether it's re-rolls, set to certain numbers, whatever, right? So, obviously it's a game of chance, right? But it looks like a silly little, back and forth. I don't know if the theme is coming out that much, but...
Does it have a boomstick?
I'm sure it does.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah. But...
this is my boomstick.
Right? So, I asked you, Daniel, and you too, GameheadGeek, have you guys heard of Iconic Studios before? They're the publisher coming out with it.
Wait, Iconic Studios? No, because...
With a Q. Iconic.
Yeah, I've heard of Iconic, I think. I've seen something that's similar to that. But I was thinking, I thought this was under
names, so I couldn't tell you.
I thought this was under Ledvinsky or something like that. I thought they were the ones that bought the rights to Evil Dead 2, because that's what was at Gamma Expo.
Yeah, no, not for this. That's the thing. So Iconic Studios, because I was like, what company is this? Because I backed it on GameFound, right? It's a pre-order system, and it's pretty inexpensive. So it says, we are a diverse and passionate group of creatives dedicated to producing high-quality collectibles, memorabilia, and tabletop games. The company formed in 2019 in the goal to create products that we ourselves, as fans, would be proud to play and display. Expansive IP-driven board games to family-fun card games and more. Okay? So they currently only have 7 games out. 2 of this is already here. 1% was already out, and it's actually ranked pretty well. It's rated about a 6 or 7.6 from fans. Evil Dead. There's one called Rituals that's coming out soon, which sounds nice and dark. But then they also created Saw, the Jigsaw Trials, that's coming out. And They Live, Assault on Cable 54. And They Live, the card game, Save the City, Enslave the City. So they're very much about horror-themed IP.
Down with that, but none of those games actually sound interesting.
I figured you might find
they
it.
They also have Kingdom Tales playing cards.
Yeah, they made a number of playing cards. They also made an Evil Dead 2 deck of playing cards, which I may or may not have bought. But yeah, so they also do playing cards along with it. But their tabletop line, they're obviously very horror-themed focused.
Yeah, it is an untapped market. We have, Trick or Treat Studios that really tie in.
Yeah, they're the ones, right.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious. I'm willing to throw some money at them to give Evil Dead another try.
Sure, knock yourself out.
We'll give it a try. I don't know. I don't know if the theme's going to come along with, but the art sure does look good.
The art does look good, because I actually just pulled it up, and it looks pretty good.
It
I'll have to look at it later, but...
Yeah. And your last piece of news.
My last piece of news, we mentioned it earlier. Horrified is getting a new expansion. I put this on the news before when I found out this just was popped up on my feed at one point.
Yep.
Didn't have a cover, just said this was going on. We asked at Gamma Expo. The people there did not know what was going on. They had to look into their catalog and like, yep, you're correct. That kind of thing. And so it's finally out. Horrified World of Monsters should come out August 1st. So when this airs for our podcast listeners, a few weeks. Yep. It is supposed to have Cthulhu, Sphinx, the Yeti, and Jinxi, which is like an eternal dragon or something like that, if I remember correctly. What I find truly intriguing about this one, I'm going to get it for no matter what.
Yeah, it's shut up and take my money at this point.
At this point. It's an expandalone.
Yeah.
It is going to have integrated roles where you can add the most recent expansion, the Greek monsters, into working with this one. I also like the fact that there is actually a whole other realm that you're going to be going into when you're fighting Cthulhu. So you're not only playing on that board, you're also playing on a whole separate board. So I want to see how they tie all this in. And I know they worked with a designer from another board game. This way they can get Jingxi working properly.
Oh, wow.
So, Simu Lu, I think his name is. I have to research that again.
I believe if we're talking about the same person, they were also one of the members of the designer tabletop.
Okay. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's neat. I like Horrified a lot. I own everything else here. We even said Greek Monsters was a back to form compared to the cryptid ones. So, I want to see how they do with this one. GameheadGeek, your thoughts?
If they can pull it off and it plays well with the other stuff, I will get it. If it doesn't, I'm not going to pick it up. Like, I know it's kind of like with you guys, it's take my money. But that just means I have 4 of those games now that maybe one might get played every Halloween kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. So for me, Horrified is such a simplistic game. It's kind of a pick your poison. Like, you guys don't want to play Universal Monsters? You don't like Dracula? Well, how about cryptids? Well, you don't like that? Okay, let's try this one instead.
But my thing, like, the only thing I always had an issue is, like, I wish it was make, like, a universal map that you could then take those characters and bring them in.
Right.
Just make one expansion like that. And so then that way, but, like, it'd be kind of cool to have the Mummy and then the Minotaur kind of going side by side at each other like that.
I get that. I understand why they don't do that, just because of the licenses of the first one. Now, I wish they connect American Monsters, Greek Monsters, and this new one together.
Yeah.
That would work fine. I like the fact that Greek Monsters and this new one is going to be working together.
Yeah. Well, I think
kind of like a what was the old 80s movie, like Monster Hunter or what Monster?
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. It's got the kids, right?
Yeah, it's the kids, and like they have all the horror themed characters show up in one city, and like I kind of just have that feel to it. Not.
No, I get it. If you get a chance, since you're going to Universal Studios, do that backlot tour.
Oh,
because it's going to show you where they filmed all the Universal Monster movies.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I will take that up. All right. Well, with that being said, that was our news segment. GameheadGeek, thank you for joining us on that as well. Now, let's get into our next segment.
And this is going to be interesting. We're going to do something a little different because normally we don't do what we've been playing lately on this part of the podcast because we like just to do the news and go to our segment.
Yep.
But it's not often we get GameheadGeek on the thing. We did it with Dammit Dom. He told us what he was playing last month. So we have some games that we played with GameheadGeek that we've talked about before.
Yep.
We want to hear your thoughts on these games. Is that cool with you?
I'm down. Let's go.
All right. Flip the coin of doom.
Let's see who begins. All right. I'm starting us off. So, this was a game that I was... you and I had already played, and you were trying to play more Kenner Spiels that day, and we're like, you know what? GameheadGeek, you haven't tried this yet. We're curious to see your thoughts on it. And I think it was only like maybe 2 turns in where you're like, oh man, this is pretty good. This is Istanbul. The Euro game where you're moving the paths. What? I mean, listeners of the podcast know how much, because we just talked about the Kenner Spiels last week, which is why it's fresh in my mind. What did you think about Istanbul?
That was such an easy and simplistic game. It's one of those that, like, I don't know. There's just something like kind of like with Splendor, where it's just super easy, but you really have to think on your turns what you're doing. Like, okay, I'm gonna go over here, but I really need to get over here. Can I make it? in time to get to that second spot, and it's just, I don't know. It's one I still need to pick up. I haven't picked it up yet, but that was an amazing game. I was very impressed. It was one of those, I always saw it, but I never picked it up. Like 5-10 years ago when it was really prevalent to own that game, and now I just kind of kick myself because it's harder to find now because of that.
Yeah, I had to hunt this one down. It took me a while. We found it, I think, at Isle of Games, used copy. And what's funny, it was used, but it was unpunched. They just looked at it and then put it back.
Yep. They're probably like, oh, that's too complicated. Just because I'm from Istanbul doesn't mean I want to play a game. So, if you rated it from like a 1 to 10, what do you think it would probably get in your mind?
In my mind, I'd probably give it 7 or 8. It might even go up higher if the wife liked it, only just for the sheer fact that if it's a game she'd play with me, then it would definitely go up higher.
Yeah.
But for me personally, that's where I'd put it at. It's not something that I would like want to base a whole game day around it kind of thing, but it's good for like that quick. It's not super quick, but it's a long enough game that you're like, all right, now let's get into something a little bit meatier now.
Yeah, it just doesn't outstay its welcome. That's
Exactly.
one of the issues, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so the game I'm going to talk about, we just played this last week, and then if you heard our chits and giggles, I would be talking about this then. It is Last Light. What did you think of that game?
Ooh, I like that. I liked Last Light, and I'm excited that I backed it on GameFound, and I can't wait for that game. I was very upset that I didn't get it the first time it came out, because I had been listening to Roy Cannaday on his podcast, and just in general talking about it, and it was always something I wanted to play, and I couldn't afford it at the time it originally came out. And I was waiting for you to say, like, oh yeah, we're playing this, and we finally got it played. It was such a good game. Such a good game.
I know, you had to make some backroom dealing for you can be here 2 weeks in a row for you can get this game played.
I know, I did, and I'm not going to be gaming with you guys tomorrow, tomorrow? No.
Yeah, tomorrow. Wednesday.
Well, yeah, Wednesday. It's Monday.
Wednesday. So, but it was definitely worth the backroom dealing so I could get to play that game, because I'm super excited.
All right. Next one I want to talk about. This was a really weird game, and I remember your reaction to it was interesting. But this, I've played it again since we last played it, and because we only played the first round. And the idea of this game is that we are all archaeologists and game experts at the same time, and we stumble upon these artifacts or these pieces to a game that isn't a game. Except it is, but we don't know the rules, and we have to figure that out. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, or the listeners of the podcast.
What's the game?
This is Unboxed by WizKids, I believe.
Okay, I'm going to put this as nicely as possible.
Remember, family friendly.
Be honest. That's why I bring it up in the first place.
Okay, so when I go play board games, and we always rag on you about your demos and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I don't want to play an unfinished board game. Like, to me, it's I don't have that much time to play board games, so I want to play something that's already been polished, it's done, it's finished. Let's go.
Yeah.
I felt like that was playing someone's demo game, and it annoyed the snot out of me. Like, that's how I felt. And for the people who love playing demos, I think they're going to get a kick out of it. Like, they will love it. Like, for you, who design board games, sure. Like, that puts your brain into a special, like, okay, let's think about this and let's go on. For me, I'm like, I don't want this. Like, give me the game, let's play, and let's go. I don't want to play this, let's make the rules up as we go.
That makes sense. And we just have one of our regulars here, So Very Wrong About Games. Thanks for joining us today. I see why it appeals to me, and I see why it annoyed you. But yet, what the strange part about it is that you quite enjoyed it.
I liked it. I liked what it was doing. I want to play more of the stuff in there.
Yeah.
I understand where he's coming from too.
Right. I don't not understand it.
But see, I like puzzles,
right.
and that's why I was like,
sure.
I want to figure out what is going on in this.
Well, see, and I like puzzles too. Don't get me wrong, but again, like that's like giving my kids a bunch of crowns and paper and like entertain yourself. Here you go.
Fair enough.
Like Give me the cool coloring book so I can color a picture when I'm done. Like, look at this, Dad. Look at it. It's awesome. That's cool. That's what I want.
Oh, that's pretty good. Okay. That's hilarious. Okay, your next one?
All right. So my next board game I'm going to talk about, it's an IP that you like, an IP that I enjoy. Our friend Dammit Dom brought it over, and I wanted to see how the game played. He's been trying to get this off his shelf of shame for a while. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something I want to go out of my way for, and this is Kick-Ass the board game. What are your thoughts on this one?
So I was kind of in that same boat with you. It's one of those. I mean, especially for the first couple rounds, we were getting our butt kicked, and I was like, "Man, this is a really challenging board game." Once we figured out how to use our abilities, it got really—I shouldn't say easy, but it got more manageable because that board can fill up with bad guys real quick, real quick. And I'm glad he owns it. When we were playing, I was like, man, do I want this or do I not? And when we got done, I was just like, yeah, this wouldn't be something. One, if I pulled it out, it would only be with you guys. It wouldn't be with like my wife and the people I play with outside of our group. And two, I don't think it kept our interest well enough. It feels like he was missing something to really make it special.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it too. Is like it felt like there was just something not streamlined about
it.
It
seemed off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, it was good. I'm glad I got to play it. I liked all the figures and stuff like that in there, especially for like a non-Marvel DC like superhero game. It was really cool. I just, yeah.
Kind of fell flat.
I would give it a 5 if I had to say out of 10.
What would you rate Unboxed? I'm just curious. Be honest.
Okay, I would probably rate that a 4.
Okay.
And I would put in my quotations, this would be higher for you if you like playing demo games or you like to design your own board games. I'm not gonna lie, like I think it has its place in the gaming community. I'm not saying it doesn't. It's not for me. It's just not like it would be good for someone trying to learn or work that like imagination in their head.
That works. All right. The last one I wanted to talk about. One thing I always liked about how you curate your collection, and you always tell us, is that like since we all started getting into games, my collection has expanded massively. Yours is pretty up there as well. The one Daniel one's behind us here. It's ever growing, and of course our friend Damn It Dom is also pretty bad. Now, GameheadGeek, you have a sizable collection, but whenever you tend to play the games that are at our game night, it seems like you have a lot more self-control because you're like, you run it through like a ringer, right? Now, and I mean that genuinely as a compliment because like you always go, yeah, this was really fun. Now, is it something I would play at home? If it is, would my wife play it or would it just be my kids? Or is it something that, like, even though I play it, it would be with only you guys and you already have it? Like, do I need a duplicate in my end? Like, and you always kind of put it through that ringer of, where me, I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever. Yeah, that's cool. I'll buy it. You know, and I probably shouldn't. Yeah, I can make my kids play. So this was one of those games that after you showed me how to play it, because this was on one of your picks, later on I found out a deal. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to have this in my collection. I bought it pretty excitedly, and I realized I don't think I would play this outside of this group ever. And this was Starship Captains. And so my question for you is, now that it's been about 6 months since we played it, what is your thoughts on it now that we have played it? Like, what, half a year ago, right?
Has it been that long?
It's been pretty close.
Yeah, it's been a bit. My copy's sitting right up there.
I will double check, but I do believe it's been about 6 months.
So again, but see, for me, again, that's a game that I haven't yet played it with them, but I could play that with my wife. Like, she would like that. Like, it's quick and it's simple. The only thing that takes a little bit on that one is just that initial setting up the board and getting it all there is, I think, takes the longest. The teach is super easy. These colors make you do this. This makes you do that, and here you go. So it's still in my collection. It's probably going to stay there for a while because I only have 2 Star Trek games. I have Starship Captains, which kind of gives you that Star Trek feel a little bit, and then I have Castle Star Trek Panic or whatever, Castle or Star Trek Panic, I think.
Yeah, it's Star Trek Panic.
So, I still like it, but also you need to tell that to my wife next time you see her, that I do have like this way of buying games, because she thinks I just still buy ridiculous amounts, and I'm like, you have no idea what other people buy games like than I like. Well, I am restrained sometimes.
You're very, out of all four of us.
I just got 5 games in today. You heard the doorbell for
one
of them.
He got one during our stream, during our live stream. He got another game in the mail. This guy, let me tell you, he's turning into me. No, it's a lot of games.
Oh yes, and I also do have the nerdy flux, so that also does count towards stuff like that.
Yeah, no, and so I asked because now I have that game in my collection. I'm like, I don't know if my other group would play it, and now 3 of us own it in our group at least. So
my wife would like the game because it's worker placement with a twist.
I don't think mine would. That's the thing.
But I could see you playing that with the kids though. Like
maybe.
It's not. I still think
my
the ships
son
needed to be something cooler, but
yeah, my son would probably be totally fine with it. My daughter, very much not. Very much not.
All right, so for my next game here, I know for a fact you've been looking for more games to play at pubs and bars and stuff like that. And your wife is very musically inclined. She loves music.
Yeah.
This is a game that Daniel 2 over here showed me, and then I showed you, but I showed you the co-op version of this game with Dammit Dom, who was super excited to show you this game too.
Yep.
What is your thoughts on Hitster?
We've actually played this again recently. Yes, go on.
Well, I could tell you, like, I literally went out at work the next day because where I work at's right next to a Target. I bought it. We haven't had time to play it yet is the only thing. So we're actually going up to Cloudcroft for the 4th of July-ish, around there.
Yeah.
And I am definitely taking that game because I could play that with my parents. I know Nicole will love it. So it is... And the fact that it has music as far back as, like, what I think we found, like...
It's like 100 years.
Yeah, it's about the 40s, I think earlier.
No, 1920s.
1920s, yeah.
Yep.
So, but... that overall with everything, like, it's not everybody would get into some type of genre.
Yeah.
And still, so. But yeah, no, I own it. It's sitting downstairs on my pile of shame.
Yeah, no, I absolutely adore that game. Like, and again, this has been one that we've played multiple times, again and again, and I just played it again a few days ago, just for that very same thing. It was a group of like 7 of us, but we were still like, okay, we'll play it out, and we'll only play to 5 points just in case. But yeah, oh man, every single one of them was like, I want this now. All right, let's get into today's episode. As we said at the top of the episode, we have our special guest here, GameheadGeek, and we're doing a compare and contrast for Terraforming Mars and Earth. Now, before we break it down, Daniel, why don't you tell them what Terraforming Mars is?
Terraforming Mars is an engine-building game about playing cards out to terraform Mars. I mean, it says it in the game. But you can go about it in different ways. You have to raise the oxygen, you have to raise the planet temperature, you have to put the oceans down and stuff like, or melt the ice caps, I think is what it's calling in there. And so you're doing all this, you're playing these cards out, you're paying resources based on your credits plus stuff that you've gathered, whether it's metal, titanium, I think it's steel and titanium are the main things, as well as heat and greenery and stuff like that. And it's basically just a slow burn engine building game where eventually, once all the game end criteria happens, you'll collect final score and you'll find out what everybody's final points are. The way the end game happens is the temperature's all the way up, all the oceans are out, and all the oxygen's maxed. Once those hit, you play out the round, find out who's the winner. Straightforward, but it's just the way all cylinders fire.
Okay. And Earth is also another engine building card based game where you're not terraforming Earth, but you're bringing out a lot of the flora and fauna, trying to build like kind of like the full biomes that Earth has.
You're building biomes.
Yeah, you're building biomes, and each of these cards that you play normally have abilities or costs that you have to pay in dirt to bring them out. And then they have all sorts of different functions, whether it's sprouting sprouts, whether it's providing dirt, whether it's endgame victory points. There's a whole slew of different things that it can do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is based on its position. But what makes it very different is, unlike just playing cards from your hand, you have an action selection process. You have 4 different actions. And the player whose turn it is chooses the action. They get the better version of that action, and everyone else takes the smaller version of that action. So if you think something like akin to like Puerto Rico, San Juan, that has kind of the same idea, just a little bit different execution, but it's the same, very similar feeling.
Both are very powerful engine buildings games out there that just do a lot with a lot.
Right, exactly. So, GameheadGeek, what is your initial thoughts on these two games?
For both these two games, I feel like it's, again, since you brought up how I think about games and how if I'm going to purchase them or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't own Terraforming Mars. I'm never going to own Terraforming Mars. It is a great game, but Daniel has it. And it's not something that I would bring out. Now, I do have the dice version and the card version of Terraforming Mars.
We don't talk about the dice version.
Yeah, that dice version's really rough. But with Earth, I have been debating on picking it up. It's on my wish list because it's something that I think I could play with my brother and sister-in-law and my wife. Mm-hmm. Just because of not so much the ease of play, but the engine building aspect. Because my brother really likes that type of stuff, and so it would be a game that I could play outside of our group. So it'd be a reason why I would probably pick it up.
All right, fair enough.
So do you have a preference of one of these over the other? Which one you think is a better game? And I know it's not necessarily what we're doing, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I would probably say Earth. As much as I like Terraforming Mars, and I know Earth has a lot of cards too. I know but I feel like you never are going to pull off it, and when you do, that's why it's super amazing when you do. But there's just so many cards in Terraforming Mars that when you try to do something that you think is going to be cool, you could just shoot yourself in the foot if you're not careful.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, so let's go into our first category. We normally start these episodes with ease of play, and we talk about which of the two games is easier to play and why. And again, our sub-criteria are the simplicity and familiarity of the mechanisms. Mm-hmm. We have the likelihood to get to the table, whether it's the theme or the mechanisms. And then finally, is it easy to learn, understand, and or teach.
And when we do it on the compare and contrast, we are saying one is easier than the other,
right.
But we're also going to give points to how the other game works in this aspect as well. So we're going to compare the both of them, but we're also going to give you the contrasting points as well.
Exactly. So let's break into that. First off, let's just ask GameheadGeek, which one do you think is easier to play in your experiences?
I'd have to say it's going to be Earth for me on this one. Like I said, the Terraforming Mars one, it's just... I think with Earth, with having that 9x9 grid, you're only slotted so much of a space. So you don't have to worry about building out too much of a big engine or a small enough engine. You know exactly what you have to do and what everybody else is trying for.
Yeah.
All right, so for me, when it comes to ease of play, both have familiar mechanisms. If you like one engine building over another, you're going to like it. If you really like Earth, I think you're not going to go wrong by making the next step if you want something just a little bit more with Terraforming Mars. So both have the simplicity. I agree with GameheadGeek. I think Earth is a much easier game compared to the two. But both of them will get a point for me on the or on the familiarity of the mechanism. Not really the simplistic aspect of the mechanism itself, because one card based tableau building game is not like the other. One is highly difficult, and the one thing I want to say about Earth when it comes to both have a giant stack of cards in the game.
Yeah.
Earth doesn't have like really super overpriced cards that you can't afford in the very beginning of the game. It's very straightforward. You'll have at least some cards that you can get hosed in Terraforming Mars by pulling cards that are going to cost you 30 of something, 40 of something, and you need your engine built before you can really start using that card. Now, you have to pay for your cards when you play the game, so that's on you if you decide to keep that card in the beginning of the game.
Right.
Both are likelihood to get to the table based on what you're into. Like, if someone who's, like, into that hardcore science, Terraforming Mars is probably going to be the one that get into it because it has true, actual science. Made by, I think, a physicist, if I remember correctly.
I don't know.
The guy who makes it, I can't remember his name. I think he is an actual physicist. And so there is...
Frixelis?
Yeah. Well, that's his company, but yeah, Jason Frixelis. I think he is a doctor of physics or something like that. He's in the science, and it has that hard science. So people who are like into that nerdy kind of stuff, they would like this aspect of it. Out of the two, I think Earth would be the one that's easier to get to the table because it's much easier to teach. It's much easier to understand. I mean, you learned it when the guy told you it at game night. At Gamma.
Yeah, during a Gamma. And now I will admit, he was an amazing... Connor McGooey. I'm going to name drop him real quick because he's the owner of Inside Out Games who publishes Earth. And that was the best demo I've ever seen. Like, hands down. The way he explained the game was concise, it was clear, it was very fluid, and you understood that game after 10 minutes of him talking, and not a single person had a single page unturned. Like, he had it to a science. He was really good. Now, this is where it's weird for me. Ease of play, while I feel like Terraforming Mars is more of a traditional, like, hey, I'm just playing cards. Like, it's just like a card game. Like, for example, like a Flux, which was referenced earlier, right? Or like a Munchkin or something. Like, it has a very similar feel. It's like, oh, well, do I have enough to play this card? Cool, I'm going to play this card. It's going to do what it's going to do, right? That's a very fundamentally simple idea on how to play it. And Earth, I feel, is more difficult in that aspect, but yet somehow the game itself functionally is easier to understand than the nuances that Terraforming Mars has. So what I'm trying to say with that is that for easier to learn, teach, and understand its Earth, I mean, pretty easily. I still have a learning curve after all the times I've played Terraforming Mars. I still have to kind of relearn the same thing over. Now, again, like, I think it's more, not so much science-based, because a lot of the biomes in Earth also have a lot of that feel. I agree that, like, it is more science-based on Terraforming Mars. I feel like if you're more of a science fiction fan, like, if you like space-themed stuff, that's probably going to be more your wheelhouse. Even if you're like a fan of like Star Trek or Star Wars, right? Like, that's kind of a cool theme, is to terraform a planet.
Yeah.
Whereas Earth, it's like, yeah, you're like, you know that thing you laugh at, you do that. Like, that's what Earth is, right?
The reason why I think Earth is simpler than Terraforming Mars, the thing with Terraforming Mars, it gives you everything. It's like the world is your playground. With Earth, it's like, it gives you everything, but it's also action selection. So I'm not playing cards every turn.
Right.
I'm either gathering water or...
You all are giving me good stuff.
Yeah. I'm getting stuff on other people's turn, and not only that, I'm not playing the cards out. Sometimes it's like, I really want to use these cards. I'm going to compost these instead, and that's still going to be victory points for me at the end of the game, because they're too expensive for me right now.
Exactly.
So, GameheadGeek, anything else you want to add on this?
No, I mean, like you guys both said it. It's one of those that, like, I feel like with actually Daniel's saying it more, is that with it, you can get hosed. I remember the first time he taught me Terraforming Mars, and I just got completely hosed right there. I'm like, well, this isn't fun now, because like I really got to start working on trying to. It's like taking like one drop of this, one drop of this, one drop of this. Where at the time he was like, I get to do 5 things because I have this, and I'm like, damn it, like, it's just that lucky. I think they tried doing it in the card game with Terraforming Mars, where they start off with these first because they will help you faster than just randomly pick. I think, or what the businesses or the
the corporations,
corporations, because those corporation cards can really help you get your engine going real quick. And I don't know, I feel like Earth makes it a little bit easier on that point because you can, like you said, compost those cards to get that back out and
Yeah.
still kind of have like, okay, I lost a turn here, but I can build it up faster
Yeah.
than over there.
Yeah, because by the time it's your next turn, you're already going to have significantly more than you did when you ended your turn last time, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of that simultaneous action selection thing. All right. Our next category is we're going to talk about replay value. And what that breaks down into is like the length of time and how it scales per player, minimum number of plays for the full experience on it, and the expandability, whether that's existing expansions, up to one possible future expansion, or any that are confirmed by designer or publisher to be in production.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start this one when it comes to the replay value aspect of it. This one, I think Terraforming Mars has Earth beat on a lot of the stuff, except for the length and time and scaling well.
Yes.
Earth is significantly quicker, even at a full player count, than Terraforming Mars is, not even at a full player count. I could play a 4 or 5 player game of Earth. I think it's just 4, right?
Yeah. You could play a 4-player game of Earth quicker than it would take
a 2-player game of Terraforming Mars, yes. So, significantly more time frame for Terraforming Mars.
Right.
Minimum number of plays for the full experience. Both of these are kind of a wash on this aspect of it because you're not going to see all the cards.
Right.
The big difference is a lot of the cards are different in Earth, but they play the kind of the same way aspect of Earth. Where Terraforming Mars, every card is different and plays different. So you don't know how an asteroid's going to deal with a nuclear bomb or something like that because there is a possibility where you can nuke the Earth. And the only other things that can give you negatives on Earth is the events. Yeah. I don't think any other card will give you negatives, where if you play specific cards in Earth, they can give you negative points at the end of the game.
Right. But they're normally a huge, awesome ability, right?
So it kind of offsets there. Where Terraforming Mars really transcends this one is the expandability. There's player boards expansions. There is, I think, 4 expansions. They have a pre-start expansion, I think is called Prelude. They just kickstarted a second version of it called Prelude 2. Okay. So there's, I want to say, 5 or 6 expansions in Terraforming Mars by itself. We only have one right now for Earth.
Yep.
What do you think, Gamehead?
I mean, even with the whole, like, if you just, and I know part of your guys' deal is like all the expansions, but even just taking Terraforming Mars by itself, with as many cards as that game originally came with, I mean, me and you have played it multiple times, and I still felt like I was learning something new every time we played, and we haven't played with the expansions. With Earth, I've only played it once, so I really can't speak too much on that one in the sense of replayability. But I know, I feel like it could have a little bit of variety, but just not as much as what Terraforming Mars offers, just right out of the box with base game to base game. So, and I know Earth just did that Kickstarter for their secondary one, so.
Yeah. Abundance, I think it's what it's called?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, Earth Abundance. Yeah, and I feel the same way as you do. Like, I feel like something in the back of my mind tells me that, I feel like minimum number of plays is a wash just because of the card-based nature of it. But not just that, like, just the initial setup. Mm-hmm. There's so much different things you could do with the corporations in Terraforming Mars. But the same is with Earth, right? You have all those different climates. You have the different animals. Like, all those different things that everyone's kind of shooting for as well. And those are, like, multiple cards per deck each, There's crazy amounts of variability on that alone. But I'm not necessarily saying that they feel all that different, but not necessarily the corporations do either, right? They all feel somewhat similar. So the only difference that I feel is between the replay value is the fact that, and this is part of the fact that since Earth is so new, Terraforming Mars has all those expansions, has all of the different variabilities right now, and has multiple spin-offs.
Yeah.
Especially like the critically acclaimed dice game.
The card game, Ares Expedition, that one is actually really good.
It is. That was the one that I used to own. Out of all of the Terraforming line, that was the one that I actually owned.
Okay.
See, that's the one I own.
Right.
Yeah, so I own all of them. I'm hesitant. I don't really want to get rid of the dice game, but if I had to get rid of one of the 3, it would be the dice game. even though it's a nice little quick game,
Yeah.
it's boring. For a dice game, it's boring.
So I have a question for you. Let's delve this a little bit deeper, yeah?
Okay.
So why do you not want to get rid of it?
It is just the collection aspect of it for myself. I have all the Terraforming Mars. I want to have the set kind of thing. The same reason why I have all the Horrified. Though I like every single one of those games in Horrified.
Right.
I like some more than the other.
Yeah.
And the dice game is not bad. I think there's just a lot of clarification rules on there. So
that
one
rulebook
of
was bad.
Yeah, one of the things about it, the universal symbol for a reroll is a dice with an arrow, right?
Yeah, with an arrow, circle arrow.
That is not what they use it for. I
Right.
think it's to gain resources or something like that. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, but now Earth also has that same thing where they have the card symbol and then an arrow going around it, and that's to compost it.
Yeah. And then they have it in a specific way though, because if it has the just the card in it, it means it coming from the deck. If it has your hand in it, it means it coming from your hand. So there is clarification on that one.
Yeah,
this one
they had to clarify it. Yeah, but
this
but
one
still,
the clarification is just because it's with a die, so
Right.
you're giving you don't see that with the cards.
yeah,
When you see it with a die, you're like, oh, do I re-roll the dice? Is that the symbol? No. And the thing is, they have a symbol for re-rolling the dice.
right. This is a totally. Did I ever tell you how funny I thought it would be? Because I was driving along a highway on one of the last trips.
Don't worry, GameheadGeek. He gets tangents like this all the time.
I was driving along the
I was
highway.
about to say, shiny object.
No, it was on one of those. It was on one of those turns that you do, like getting off or on the highway, like the big roundabout one. And it has the picture of a truck tilting over, and it has that arrow twisting over. I can't help but think now. It's I need to re-roll all my trucks now, because that's the international symbol for re-rolling my trucks. I want to put some dice pips on the truck. That would be
So
hilarious,
random.
and see how many nerds love that.
See what I got to put up with all the time?
Hey, you agreed to it. I'm just saying.
We've been doing this for 5 years.
I know. It's like being in a marriage, dude. You chose him.
I'm not saying you should graffiti your safety signs. I'm just saying if you put circular black dots.
All right, moving
On the
on
sign.
to meaningful choice. So we're all in agreement that replay value is Terraforming Mars in this aspect.
It would be. Yes.
So meaningful choice is the impact on other players, the depth of strategy, tactics, or skill, and do arbitrary choices or AP make an impact on the gameplay? What are your thoughts, Daniel? 2.
Oh, I'm Daniel 1 now. Upgrade. No, so 100%, Terraforming Mars, even though there's some really messed up cards to mess up your opponents, and you're all playing on a board, there's really not interaction in that.
There's a lot more than there is in Earth. The only time you're paying attention to someone else is
No, I mean, you pay attention during every turn, right? But no, I agree. I'm not saying that there's necessarily more. There is technically more interaction as affecting other players' strategy by what action you pick that everyone has to take.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But as far as actual legitimate interaction, when we get to game immersion, that would be Terraforming Mars, because you could just mess people's stuff up real bad. But impacting the other players' strategies, I feel, is heavier in Earth, just because that simultaneous selection is so valuable for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Tactics and skills, you can do pretty good with a lot of different strategies. You could play pretty arbitrarily, and there's ways that you can fix what you've been working on. One of the loosest terms, or loosest rules that they have in Earth that irks me just a little bit, but it's really not enough for me to upset it, is that you're playing in a 4x4 grid, but the boundaries are never set until you've placed a card that meets that boundary. So I just put a card arbitrarily in the middle of the table. That's just the first card I play. Mm-hmm. But then later on, it's all right, I need cards above it. Okay, let me just put cards above it. And I can do that as many times as I want, or below, until I just reach that threshold. And so then at some point, everybody at every point during Earth that I've played, you're like, all right, hold on. Shift. Now I'm going to build this way. Now I have enough room, right?
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. It's a minor complaint, but that's what I feel is that. That's a little more multiplayer solitaire. It's a little more less about your tactics, how much you have to invest into the idea, because you're not really going to know what cards or what resources or what abilities you're going to have until later on.
Gamehead?
But I think that's what makes it kind of interesting that you can do that.
Right.
The thing that annoys you just for the sheer fact that like, crud, I got this really cool card and it would combo really great if I could put it up instead of like saying, okay, this is my corner card no matter what on the left side. Does that make sense? So like that's I don't know. I like that a little bit more on that aspect. I don't recall because on Earth the action selection is like if you pick it, then I could do that next.
You can do the same power, but lesser.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See. So
and then activate all your cards of that color.
Yeah, and that's I feel like that's what I like about Earth and why I think my wife would be more into it is because of the sheer fact that like it would keep her engaged throughout the entire thing. Where if I tried doing Terraforming Mars, there would be none of that engagement. No. Like you said, and I feel like when you get those more people involved in the game, so a 3, 4, 5 player game, like you're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting until everybody's done, and they're like, "Oh crap, is it my turn? Oh, it is my turn. Okay, I'm sorry." And like, so.
Yeah. All right, going into mine with the meaningful choice here is, unlike what you're saying, I think Terraforming Mars does impact other player strategies, not just because of the board play. Because certain things will score you if you build next to somebody. So, like, your forests are going to be built... If someone builds forest by your city, you're going to score for every forest by that city. So, if I control a city and, damn it, Dom's over there and Bryce is over here and I'm doing all this, that's going to impact other player strategy. You and me, which we'll probably talk about in game immersion, also impacted somebody else when we played Terraforming Mars because you and me decided to brute force the game, which forced everybody else at the table to start hurrying up.
Yes.
So there's the impact there
because we pretty funny
because we brute force things.
But that could be done in most games. Like we were just running and gunning. Really, is what we were doing.
Well, we were running and gunning, but we were still making smart choices by the run and gun.
You might have been.
I was making smart choices. I was getting
can't
points.
promise I was trying to win.
And so both of them have really in-depth strategies and stuff like that. And all your strategy really starts is at the beginning of the round when you draw your cards, because you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Where I think Terraforming Mars can switch this up, and I know you're not a fan of this mechanism, is pick and pass. One of the variants is you can draft your hand.
Sure.
And I like the fact that in Terraforming Mars, too, I can give myself a handicap if I'm playing with, like, newer players. So I have to pick a corporation. I have to pay for my cards. If I'm playing with new players and I'm teaching them the game, they get to keep everything in their hand and they don't have to lose their money. And they're playing a basic corporation, so they don't have to deal with the asymmetry on that aspect. I like the fact that I can handicap myself to get newer players to play this game. It's kind of weird that they have this installed into a game, whereas Earth, I don't really have to handicap myself because it's all beholden by your cards and your action selection. And I'm always getting something on everybody's turn. I do like that aspect of it because there's a lot of depth and strategy in both of these games. Where I think it's the biggest wash here, and it's 2 different points, is you can have a lot more arbitrary choices in Earth than you can in Terraforming Mars because you have to be smart how you play your cards and how you select your cards because you got to pay for said cards. Every round or age, whatever it is in Terraforming Mars, you draw up new cards. You have to spend your hard-earned money to keep those cards in your hand. You're just going to be drawing cards in Earth. You don't have to pay for them or anything like that. Right. So there is some arbitrary choices based on just what's coming into your hand. Whereas on the other hand, when we go into the meaningful choice, the second part of this, do arbitrary choices or AP make an impact on the game? Terraforming Mars is hardcore AP. There is a reason why we brute force that game. We were playing with someone who has unbelievable AP when it came to playing games. So so both of it's kind of, for me, it's kind of a wash. I think both of them are very full of meaningful choice, and it's just what you get with engine builders.
Terraforming Mars is more strategic, long term, whereas Earth is definitely more tactics, short term. Yes, like hands down.
But one has arbitrary choice, the other one has AP. So it's like, pick your poison, people. Are you okay with AP, or do you not play with a lot of AP players? Then you should be fine. arbitrary choices is probably my selection. I'd rather have an arbitrary choice which means everything's good, then it's not really a great choice aspect than, something being slogged to a... Terraforming Mars is already a long game. AP is going to slow that even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, game immersion.
Game immersion. This breaks down to, first off, is the game fun to lose? The player interaction, and this is more like akin to role-playing or being in theme of the game, and memorable stand-up moments that make you hoot and holler and shout.
How about we let GameheadGeek talk this one, because we have memorable moments because of him screaming and shouting in the board game shop.
Okay, that was Small World. That had nothing to do with these games.
But you're the excuse we give for memorable moments.
It was one time.
Actually, no, because King of Tokyo, too, when you got mad at me for using my detachable tail.
And
Okay,
Power
now-
Grid with that jaw-dropping moment as well. You got more than one.
All right. I forgot the question now because
Game immersion. Is the game
Immersion.
fun to lose? Does it have player interaction like table talk or role playing in memorable moments?
Okay. So, for me, I feel like it's a little bit of a wash on both. I do, if I had to say one that would immerse me more, I would have to say it is Terraforming Mars a little bit, only for the sheer fact that as you build up those tracks and you can kind of see how things are developing on that planet, I guess you can kind of feel that is like you're from space looking down, like, okay, what are we doing? Are we getting that temperature hotter? Are we doing this? Like, you're looking at a screen, changing it. Whereas in Earth, I don't... that immersion, I feel, isn't really there. Like, I'm not... You could have made this... not vegetable plants, but you could have made this just animals in general and do, like, a food chain thing. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. You're just trying to build that engine to make it work. But I do know for memorable moments, I would have to say, because of the action selection in Earth, it does give you that a little bit where, like, if, say, like, Danny put something down, I'm like, oh, I needed that, so now I'm just, like, one away from getting this last thing done that I needed to just complete everything I wanted to do in this. So you're banking on people playing things that you need, so that way when it comes to your turn, you could make a really cool turn. I don't feel like you get that in Terraforming Mars in that sense. But I would, like I said, that's why I think it's a wash. Like, I feel like Terraforming Mars immerses you more into, yes, I'm looking at this, trying to build up Mars into a planet, to there's a little bit more memorable moments in Earth because, yes, all the chips fell into place and, man, I got what I wanted to do in this turn.
Yep. All right, number 2.
Number 2, sir. So you waited that whole time that he was talking just so you could prepare that, didn't you?
Yep.
You son of a
I'm going to
gun.
start calling you that from now on.
Number 2, sir.
Number 2.
Yeah, this is strike number 2 for you, Gamehead Geek. Let me tell you.
All
Speaking
I'm
of
thinking
number
is Austin
2.
Powers in number 2.
You know what this reminds me of, right? You ever watch Scrubs?
Uh-huh.
Number 1! Number 2! You're number 2.
Hey, number 1. Hey, number 2.
What did I say about encouraging this behavior, sir? All right, anyway, no, game immersion though. Like, the thing is, I don't feel immersed in either of them. I don't really feel like I'm terraforming a planet. I don't really feel like I'm building a biome in either. They're both pretty loose. The only thing is, like, and I don't know that there's necessarily any moments that are like that are positively stand out. The one difference that I really feel in this one is if you're doing really bad at Terraforming Mars halfway through the game and you see other people doing really well, it's such a unpleasant feeling. It's like, man, like, why am I even playing? Like, there's been times I played Terraforming Mars and genuinely thought halfway through, it's like, I can stop now and it's not going to affect you guys and I just won't have to deal with it. And I'm just wanting to check out.
It's almost like getting your dogs frozen up in the north and everybody keeps going on without you.
Well, so listeners to the podcast, can you explain that for the listeners of our podcast? Because wow, that was
We've talked about it before.
That was a deep cut, wasn't
Sorry to interrupt on you. I had to.
No, that's
what was the game called?
Expedition Northwest Passage, and that's a memorable moment, isn't it? Hey,
Yes,
Luminous.
it is. So I had the great idea to getting to the other side in this game, you're trying to get from one end of the board to the other and back. And I made it to one end of the board, but coming back, the sun had just shifted enough that all the ice caps melted, and so I couldn't get my dog sled team back to my ship, which I had left with nobody in it. So all my people froze and died, were stranded on an iceberg. So, yeah.
At least it wasn't negative points. You got a whole 2 points.
Yeah, you came out on the plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty rough situation. I do still feel bad about that. But like
no, it was my own fault for not thinking that. I just forgot that the sun shifts and then I was going to lose all that ice that I was crawling on, and yeah.
Because you rocketed over there. You did really well getting over there. And you scored, I think, the most points from that part. It's just they all died in the process. That was the problem. Minor detail.
All right, back to the
but back to Terraforming Mars and Earth. I feel like there is a point in Terraforming Mars where if you just didn't get the stuff that could help you, or like you were saying, at the beginning of the game where you're just nerfed with the really expensive cards and and it's hard to build up that engine, and you're doing all that upkeep to just try and catch up. I rarely feel like I want to walk out of a game, and I have felt that before with Terraforming Mars. And even though our memorable moment, I'll let you tell them about our memorable moment. While that was funny, I wouldn't give that as a positive to the game at the same time.
Yeah, that's
for myself.
My thing is, it is a memorable moment for me because I didn't know. And the thing is, I think you came in first place when you won that game.
Oh, I don't think I did.
Because no, I think you won the game because I came in second. I know I came in second, and I remember. Because the reason why it's a memorable moment for me in the aspect is you and me just kind of looked at each other realizing what we were both doing and decided to keep going with it. And I remember at that point our friend Dammit Dom looked at us and he's like, you sons of... Because he figured out what we were doing because I was concentrating on the heat and I think you were concentrating on the trees and the oceans were pretty much out there. And so we were just...
We were both... trying to force the end of the game before either of the engines they were working on could ever get to the point of efficiency.
Luckily, my engine was already efficient, and that's why it was a memorable moment for me, because mine was all about the heat system. And so that's why I kept raising the temperature, because I was producing heat so much, and one of the things about it is that you could turn that heat to raise the temperature. And so, every time I was playing, I was getting 8 heat and stuff like that, so I could turn that heat into a temperature aspect. And so that gave me victory points, and that gave me all this and this. I was a heat factory. And so that's what I really enjoyed about it, and that's why it was such a memorable moment for me. And I just remember my favorite memory of that is you and me both look at each other and just kind of go, and just started playing. Because we knew what was going to happen. And I remember Dammit Dom looked over at us and guys, man, come on. He started having to play fast and get his engine going a little better. So that one is just one thing that was really ingrained in me. I played a big version of this at the Board Game Con, or not Board Game Con, when we had Tabletop Day at the shop not too long ago. And I remember playing this game in a big group and enjoying it. And so I have a lot of good memories for this game. I have good memories playing with my wife and our friends. I have good memories playing with this game group. The player interaction, I think, is just slightly more in the actual gameplay aspect of it in Terraforming Mars. Because if someone throws that asteroid and you're like, oh man, really? You gotta do that now? I was about to go over here, get this all set up. Or if someone takes that last ocean away from you and you're like, I was gonna do this, and I was gonna do that, and I was gonna ramp this up, and this engine, and that was taken away. But I find Earth just a much more clever game in a sense, where I feel like it is more fun to lose Earth because you feel more clever once you're done playing it.
Right.
You feel smart if you get your engine building right in Terraforming Mars. But what you said too, halfway through the game if there's a runaway.
If you have a chance,
Yeah, so Earth can get like that sometimes, but not as bad as you can get in Terraforming Mars. And I feel much more clever. I'm like, oh, I got this, and now it bounces off this, and bounces off that, bounces off this, and now I'm getting all these sprouts on my thing, or I'm getting all this water to help grow all this stuff. So yeah, I think Earth is a much more fun game to lose. I just think the role playing and the table talk just comes out a little bit more, not much, a little bit more in Terraforming Mars.
Do you agree with that, GameheadGeek?
I don't know. I'm
You can abstain from it. You can plead the fifth. That's fine.
like I said, it's been a while since I have played Terraforming Mars, so it's not as fresh in my head as Earth is. Because Earth we just played recently.
Yeah.
So, but for me, in my head, it feels more like Earth than it did. Terraforming Mars.
And it's fair. It's everybody. This is the game immersion is like one of the most opinionated one that we really have, other than the next category, because that's all about opinion there.
That's right. Let's get into it. This is art and production. This is our final of the 5th categories: the art, pieces and components, and graphic design. And
I have thoughts on this one.
I do too. I want to look something up online real quick.
Okay, I'll start it off then.
I believe there's a rumor that I heard about one of them.
So if you listen to Chits and Giggles, then you'll know how I feel about Terraforming Mars' art. I am not a fan of this art at all. It is not... It's fine. I like the fact that everything is different, but I'm talking about the over-encompassing art in this game. The art on the cards is fine. It's not anything great, but the cover is boring. The board is boring. The pieces that you get for this game, the little tokens, the Terraform Mars, is boring. It's like the blandest thing you're going to get out of a game. And this is a game that relatively came out within the last 5 years or so. And so you expect something like Earth, which even though it is photos, it is fantastic pieces of art. It also has much more better pieces and components than Terraforming Mars does. To the point where I had to buy the big box of Terraforming Mars with all the 3D printed stuff, and the 3D printed stuff is not all that great. In the graphic design, both of them are horrible in the graphic design, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But GameheadGeek, you look like you want to say something, so go ahead.
Well, I hadn't seen the 3D pieces, but I was gonna say, like, did you just buy like all the 3D? Like, you have all the nice components for that game. I would assume it would have been higher up on that.
We usually just try to compare the base game to each other, to the point where I had to go out and buy extra stuff to make my game look prettier, and it doesn't even look that much prettier.
I'll give you that. If we're basing this off of the base game, then yes. The component-wise, artwork-wise, there are photos, so... But my thing to you, and I don't know, it's funny because how much more on a terraforming of a planet can be, like, exciting. Like, even in sci-fi movies, it's always kind of like, I don't want to be the person terraforming now. Like...
Yeah, and so... I also want to make another caveat with the Earth. If you get the base copy and stuff like that, it has really nice components. I have the upgraded components because of the Kickstarter stuff. However, if you play with people who have dirty minds, GameheadGeek, they tend to call the plants a certain term that is used as a sexual device.
Hey, you mean the tree that looked exactly like what you think it is.
I will tell you when we get off the family-friendly show. My wife called it the same thing, so... See?
They could have made the top of that tree look like something completely different.
They did. On the most recent Kickstarter, they changed the tree toppers.
Because they knew. They're like, man, this looks like that. If you don't know what we're talking about, go look it up.
No, don't look it up. Don't listen to GameheadGeek. Let's not look this up. You can look at the pieces, sure, and use your imagination. No, I know what the reference is. I'm aware of the reference. I'm just saying it doesn't need to be referenced. That's all I'm trying to put. I'm trying to put the kibosh on this, all right? Well, I want to go back to the art real quick to drastically change the subject first. But I do want to talk about the art, and this is one thing I wanted to double check on, and that is that when they were making the newest Terraforming Mars update on the newest Kickstarter, like last year in September, they did say that parts of the art were using AI generative...
In the prelude, too.
Yeah, using AI generative systems. Now, they didn't say if that was necessarily to make new art, or whether that was actually to make images, or whether that was to get certain designs in it. Like, I've heard a lot of different aspects of it, and I'm not about to start rumors. I don't know what portions of it, but they did agree, or they did publicly state that they were using AI tools in parts of the art for the game, which...
Just to clarify, in the newest expansion.
In the newest
not
expansion,
in the base
not
stuff.
in the base game. Yeah, and so that's... Now, granted, I'm probably not as against AI art as other people are, but they have every right to be against it, especially artists.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very contentious term that we don't shy away from here at Everyday Board Games. We talk about it. If there's a game that uses it, or the benefits or disadvantages to using AI for whatever reason, right? But it's something we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the fact that they took a game that ugly and put AI art on it, maybe that's recognition of how bad that art is. And not to say that the art is really... I actually don't think the art is all that bad. I just don't think that...
I don't know, but that cover art is bad.
I don't think it's good. I just don't think it's bad. It's no Frederikus, right?
It's better than Frederikus, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. It's actually, I just remembered one of the games I need to put on my list for this next episode. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's not that it's that bad. It's just the fact that they had to do that versus just wait longer for more artists or commission more artists to do the same. You know.
So, my only concern with that is, and I mean, besides the fact of why, aside from AI art in board games in general, because I know that's its own can of worms. My concern, as someone who would be purchasing the game, if I was like Daniel, who has that, is it going to change the art enough that you're going to tell a difference?
Well,
you see what I'm saying? Like, because I hate when you get a game and then you get an expansion and something's different from it because they couldn't keep with the original.
Yeah, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can't be any worse than what is that legendary game, Firefly Legendary? That art was horrible.
but you see what I'm saying? Like, you already had this, like, you already had your artwork here, done by somebody,
right.
And now you're doing an AI generation of it. I mean, you can usually tell on that AI generation, like it. Sometimes they look cool, but like there's some weird things that happen in it because of how it's trying to mesh whatever it's trying to generate.
The prompts, yeah.
So now you're gonna have this weird artwork with the bad artwork, and then you're just like, ugh, like.
And Illumina says he can tell the difference, so yeah, he agrees.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things about it. Now, we've also had, and I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, GameheadGeek. Sorry about that.
No. That was my biggest thing, because like, just in general, when you get games and then you get that expansion and it doesn't match up or it doesn't line up, how many people complain about that? And now you've switched completely different. Like, you've gone one direction. Like, oh no, now we're gonna go this direction. That's gonna cause even more.
Yeah.
Where people aren't gonna want to play with that expansion because like you will be able to tell, oh, that's an expansion card right there.
Right.
That disconnect. Yeah, I get that.
Now, and one of the other things that I find interesting that I think is worth bringing up, yeah, some of the graphic design in Earth is questionable, and it's not as colorblind friendly. Now, I do understand that Inside Up Games is working to
fix that, yeah.
And in additional productions, they've actually discussed with me directly and our friend Dammit Dom and a few others, and we discussed about the colorblindness. Was it after he discovered that I was colorblind after playing the game? And
then my big thing about it is, like, if you have a first printing of Earth, you could tell they were trying to be colorblind friendly because they have designs on the cards.
Yes, they have the designs behind.
But it's not printed very well on the board. You have to like get a magnifying glass in a light, really, just to shine on it to see the graphic design on there.
But the big thing I want to bring up, and we had a very contentious debate over this, like last time we talked about Earth, is that yes, it's not an artist, it's a photographer, and it is essentially like stock images of biomes and plants and all that stuff.
I don't think we had it on the discussion here. I think it was our discussion at the Gamma Expo.
No, it was on this episode because you almost got the lightsaber out. And you didn't have that at the Gamma Expo. No, but we had this big discussion about it, saying... because I actively told our listeners, hey, if you disagree, Daniel just said photographers aren't artists. And that was a quote that I remember saying. But speaking of memorable moments. But, no, the thing is, like, even though it's essentially stock photos that have been manipulated together, right? Mm-hmm. I would rather have that than AI. And I don't know if that's contentious or not, but, like...
I'd rather have stock photos over AI, too.
Like, I mean, not just morally, I think I would like it better. And I do love the art.
Go ahead, Game Earth.
Well, because he even mentioned, too, the Dragonfly game. Or
Firefly.
Firefly. I bought Firefly. I got rid of it because the art was so bad. But if I would have had stock photos from the TV show, I would have totally been okay with that. I would have I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have complained because some of the artwork that they had on some of their other games was really good, and then they came out with that. But I got rid of that Firefly game just because of that art was just so bad. I was like, this isn't fun looking at these cards and thinking that I'm playing the TV show that I loved.
Yeah.
I know Luminous is saying that he's against stock photos with games like Earth and Arc Nova, which I get too. But I'd rather have stock photo, especially when it comes to how you're mentioning how Prelude 2 is using AI art, and how GameheadGeek was talking about how it could bring a disconnect to the expansion. Now, like, if you made the entire game with that kind of art style, if it doesn't give you that disconnect, then fine. But the fact is, like, with Earth, they can easier do stock photos this way. It's still connected to the original creator.
Right? Yeah.
Compared to something like the AI art with the base game.
Right, because the thing is, like, if they use stock photos, like, from a TV show or an IP, they have to still license the images. Mm-hmm. But, like, even, like, if you got all of your art from, like, Shutterstock or some other, big company like this, that is still passing money, yes, to that company for your subscriptions, but anytime that art is used anywhere, like, they get a percentage of it. So that does encourage and that does help employ the photographers that are going out and taking these photos. So, I mean, like, yeah, it might not be as preferable as just a really, really great artist. But if you're going to go not that route, I would much rather have manipulated photos than AI, personally.
All right.
Again, we can go back and forth about this, but I do think that the art, because of that, is better in Earth. I think the graphic design is probably better in Terraforming Mars.
Yes.
Just because of a few of those errors.
Both of them aren't great, let me tell you.
Yeah, but pieces and components, though...
Earth
is better.
Much better.
Because although I do like the shiny cubes,
the shiny cubes are the best part, but the fact that you had to go through a Kickstarter to get the overlay boards.
Yeah.
Because base game is just the paper boards.
Yep.
You had to go through a Kickstarter to get the 3D printed pieces, or an Etsy store for the 3D printed pieces. Go ahead.
I know you mentioned the cubes, but I remember when that came out, that was a huge thing that those cubes looked metallic, because that was the first time it was a plastic piece that looked metallic.
Yes.
No, it was fantastic, and I agree with that. That's the best thing about this game.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that came out of this game.
Yeah.
The art and everything else. It's the only thing I've kept out of the base stuff other than the cards is those pieces. And I have the metallic ones now, so I guess not, because I actually bought the metallic ones out of one of the Kickstarters.
Wow. What you're saying is Terraforming Mars is trash. Got it.
And the art and production side of things, Stronghold did not do that game justice.
That's fair.
I don't think they thought it was going to be the evergreen that it turned out to be.
I give you that as well.
And then they tried fixing it along the way. It's kind of like...
Yeah,
all right.
That's a good point.
Let's end this going off real quick. Out of these two games, which one would you recommend?
Again, see, with recommendations on this, I'm gonna do it this way. I'm not part of your thing, but so for me, if you have non-gamers or people just getting into the hobby, I think Earth is probably a great mid-tier game for that person. If you have friends like you guys, where we're just nothing but gamers, I would go Terraforming Mars.
It's exactly how we do our recommendations on this one. You said it how exactly how I would say it too. Newer gamers, newer to the hobby, not too familiar with engine builders, I would teach Earth, hands down, right then and there. People who are experienced gamers that like say you're bringing over war gamers and they want something crunchy in the board game style, I'd give them Terraforming Mars over Earth.
I'm going to go a little bit differently on this, but generally I do agree. Like, I'm thinking more like if you're from like the hardcore Euro aspect of it, if you like min-maxing and all that stuff, like that action selection is very comfortable from like a Puerto Rico or San Juan fan. Even like race or roll for the Galaxy, you're going to know that action selection system, and that will port over to Earth really conveniently. So I think Earth is more of like a Euro game, even though it's the whole Earth, it's more Euro. At the same time, yes, that was supposed to be a joke, by the way, everybody. I apologize. But then Terraforming Mars really is, it's kind of like the engine building answer to everybody who is playing all those like Ameritrash, I'm going to play some cards and beat some things up and destroy things, and I'm going to cause shenanigans in the silliest way possible. It's like, but now I want to add some more engine building into that. I think Terraforming is the right place for them.
All right, with that being said, let's kind of mention some other games real quick that falls into this line. You got Ark Nova, which is another fantastic game. It falls into both of these. You got the little action selection that you get out of Earth based on your little card pools, a bunch of cards. My issue with Ark Nova is the way the scoring works, where you have to cross.
The negative points? Yeah, because I ended in negative points, and I was like, I spent an hour, 2 hours playing this game, and I'm at negative 6 points. Right. I understand I shouldn't own a zoo, because that's pretty much what you're doing. But I already knew that going into this. I don't need the game telling me I shouldn't own a zoo.
That's the validation part of it. Another game that's also brought in the same idea, more or less, is Wingspan, right?
Yeah.
Nature-themed engine building. I would say Wingspan is more akin to Terraforming Mars than it is...
It's closer to Terraforming Mars. I think if we had to put those three in a row, it'd be Earth, then Wingspan, then Terraforming Mars for me. I think Wingspan's just a slightly simpler compared to Terraforming Mars, just because of the way all the cards play.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, because Luminous brought up that he didn't think Terraforming Mars was that bad for beginners. Me personally, I would probably introduce, if I had to do Terraforming Mars, I would probably do the card game first.
Yes.
If they like that, then I would transfer into actual Terraforming Mars.
Which makes me bring up my new point, where Terraforming Mars does have like a smaller version of it, the card game Ares Expedition. I think that one is a much simpler game, as GameheadGeek says, compared to Terraforming Mars on its own. So there's a plethora of picks out there. We strictly took, because we've compared in our group Earth to Terraforming Mars a lot, so we figured we get it out there for our audience to decide what's best for them.
Yep. All right, perfect.
GameheadGeek, where can we find you?
I am on TikTok and on Instagram. Those are pretty much the only two places that I'm on. Like I said, I'm on hiatus right now until I get my room cleaned up and I can get a table back in here, so I can start doing some of my reviews that I like doing. So.
All right, and then let's.
So we're gonna give our little outro. Here we go. So I wanted to thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed our episode today, you can actually email us directly. You can let us know what you think about the episode, and also send us direct emails to everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com, whether that's to enter in future contests, just to say hello, or give us ideas for future episodes. Also, just like GameheadGeek, follow them on Instagram, and also follow us on Instagram while you're at it, at instagram.com/everydayboardgames.
As well as all video re-uploads are found on YouTube under youtube.com/@everydayboardgames. And we also do reviews there. If you like what we do, there are 3 things you can do to help us grow on the platform. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment down below and tell us your thoughts on the subject.
We love hearing from people during live episodes of our recording. We stream every one of our episodes on twitch.tv/everydayboardgames. And we want to give a thanks to everybody who joined in on our conversation today, like our good friend Illuminous, So Very Wrong About Games, and anybody else who tuned in today.
As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Spotify, Amazon, Podbean, and Apple.
So we want to thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And I'm GameheadGeek.
And we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
And remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.